What's going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to go over Bitfarms and what I expect their revenue to look like when they report earnings. Just like most Bitcoin miners, they give us monthly updates on their Bitcoin sold, their Bitcoin holdings, things like that. And by looking at April, May, and June, what they sold their Bitcoin for, how much of their Bitcoin they sold, we can get an idea of what their revenue is going to look like for earnings. So let's look at that in this video. And I'm also going to briefly touch on the Fed meeting coming up. And I'll leave this link down below for you, but this person's basically saying, oh, they might raise rates here, then pause, then raise again, then pause, then raise. I think that's very unlikely. And I honestly think it's unnecessary to raise rates in this upcoming meeting, although it's expected that they will, so the Fed may take advantage of it. Since the market is sort of expecting it, they're essentially not going to shock the market with a rate hike, so they probably see it as a golden opportunity to do so, to make sure that inflation keeps coming down. Well, I think this rate hike or potential rate hike is unnecessary. CPI has been trending down very consistently. We are now at 3% inflation year over year on CPI. And look at PPI, Producer Price Index. We are now at a 0.1% inflation. This is about to be deflationary. One thing to realize is a lot of these rate hikes, we're still waiting for the ripple effect. We're still waiting for these rate hikes, these previous rate hikes, to actually be reflected in the market. And when they raise rates, you have to think this affects the market in months to come. And this is the most aggressive Fed we have seen in modern times. I do think CPI is going to be well under their target within the next few CPI prints. I think PPI is going to be deflationary. I think the used auto market, you can see what I've been looking at. I think the used auto market is going to continue to fall. And what's really keeping the Fed, on the path of raising rates is a strong labor market. So now we have inflation rising by the smallest amount since March of 2021. But I think what's really going to be important, because it's already somewhat expected that the Fed's going to raise rates, I think it's going to be really important to hear what they actually say in the meeting, just like every meeting, obviously. But this is going to be crucial. This is where we'll see kind of where the Fed's head is at. And, I just find these articles kind of funny because it's like they don't realize that this has a lagging effect. And just because they raised rates a couple months ago doesn't even necessarily mean that it's reflected in current CPI or PCE. These are all lagging, and these rate hikes take time to be felt throughout the whole economy. But anyways, let's look at Bitfarms. Now, taking a look at Bitfarms' recent mining updates, you'll see that in June they sold 346 Bitcoin out of the 385 they mined, so they did add some to their balance sheet. They generated 9.5 million in revenue for the month of June. Looking at May, they sold 414 of the 459 that they mined. Again, they added to their balance sheet, and they generated a total of 11.3 million in May. Looking at April, they sold 349 of the 379 that they mined, once again adding some to their balance sheet, generating a total of $10.1 million in revenue. Now adding this up together, you're looking at about 31 million, or specifically 30.9 million. And looking at TradingView, seeing what they're expecting for revenue, they're expecting nearly 35 million, or specifically 34.5 million. So they are going to be off by a bit, according to their monthly updates. However, the positive here is, unlike CleanSpark, they're going to be pretty close in revenue. CleanSpark was expecting something like 50 million, and they're going to be right around the 35 area, I believe, at least for CleanSpark. So I think they're going to have a pretty serious miss on revenue. That doesn't mean I'm any less bullish on CleanSpark. And quickly speaking of CleanSpark, I do have some $10 strike covered calls, meaning if CleanSpark gets to $10, I will be selling my shares, and this expires on April 18th, I believe, or 16th. But I'm pretty confident that that's not going to hit. I'm just going to collect that premium, and then I can go into, hopefully in the future, doing like a 1250 strike on each contract. Now remember, with options, each contract totals 100 shares. So if you have a huge position of either, Bitfarms, what have you, it doesn't matter if it's CleanSpark or not, but whatever you have, if you have a large position, sometimes it's, nice to play these options, play these covered calls. If you're looking to acquire more shares, you can do a cash secured put, but that's definitely a strategy I love doing because, say you want to sell some shares potentially, something's been running up quite a bit, you want to take some profits. Well, one way you can make some passive income is by selling covered calls. You can collect that premium whether or not that covered call gets called, and you end up selling your shares. So if it expires worthless, you still collect that premium. If it gets to that strike price and the other person with that contract executes it, then they would be acquiring your shares at that certain strike price. The only negative here with this strategy is, say CleanSpark just runs up past $10 while you'd be still having to sell your CleanSpark at that $10 strike, for example. But I definitely love these strategies. When things become overbought, I like selling covered calls. Typically, when things become oversold, sometimes it's a good idea to sell some cash secured puts. Get in at a lower price if it does hit, and if it doesn't hit, then you're collecting that premium. But quickly looking at Bitfarms on the chart, it did pull back a bit. It tested this previous area I was talking about, this 160 area. It seems like it's gonna bounce, but I'm continuing to watch this to see if we're gonna start pulling back towards the 50 MA again, right around $1.50 or so. I do expect quite a bit of volatility, a little bit of fear as we get to this Fed meeting. I think tomorrow could be a great time to acquire some shares in either Bitfarms or even CleanSpark. But let me know what you guys think about Bitfarms. Do you think it'll be a great buying opportunity as we head towards earnings, if they do in fact miss their revenue, which is what it seems like is going to happen? I think these mining updates for all these miners kind of give us a cheat sheet on an idea of what their revenue is going to be, so you can kind of trade accordingly or just have a strategy there. But thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think about the upcoming Fed meeting. The general consensus is that they're going to raise rates, so I do think that's pretty likely to happen, although I do think it's unnecessary. I'll definitely be listening to the Fed meeting, seeing what kind of wording they give us, seeing if they indicate that rate cuts are coming by the end of the year. And of course, we're going to need to look at upcoming data like CPI, PPI, PCE, all that good stuff. Let me know what you think about Bitfarms. What is your top Bitcoin miner? For me, it's still CleanSpark, but I definitely think there's a lot of opportunity in these smaller miners like TeraWolf, Bitfarms, even Sphere 3D.